Alrighty, we're going to call this study session to order. And it's a study session, so we don't have a roll call. We just start immediately with the agenda. We have two items for discussion on our agenda this evening. The first is Kading Properties, I believe a presentation by Mr. Ed Malloy, who is the Executive Director of Grow Fairfield, my former mayor. Thank you, Ed.
Well, good evening, Council. So, Council, tonight I gave you a couple of items for this evening's presentation. One is the most recent concept drawing that I received from Kading Properties that takes a look at that piece of property, 17 acres on Gear Avenue between 18th and 12th, and basically nicely fits in 30 buildings, 156 units. So that was up to this point, that was a question in my mind where they were going to land, how many they were going to do. So this is really quite a significant project, what they envisioned for this. So yes, return view. This is Gear Avenue to the north up here. And then you'll see two streets that come in off of that. And again, these are private roads, internal roads. And those are all like fourplexes and fiveplexes. So if you look closely, you can see separation between the buildings, and then there are numbers on each of the units. And if you go down to this to the south phase of it to the backside, you'll see number 156. That's the last unit. So anyway, that's what's proposed. And then the green that you see up there, if you've looked at that property, there is a drainage issue there that they're, obviously there's any specific engineering on that, but that will all be reserved for either a detention pond or a retention pond to take care of the water on that site. So the next step, and in my presentations over the last 6 months, we've talked about this. There is an expectation that there will be a developer agreement with the city of Fairfield where we would talk about incentives to get them committed to building this development. I'm just trying to do a calculation, and I figure if they know that what they rent is somewhere between 850 and say 1,250 or 1,300 square feet. So if you use an average of 1,000 per unit and figure about $200 per square foot in construction, it's a $31,200,000 investment. So they have, as we've I think discussed in the past, some of the pieces of an incentive-based package for them comes in the form of land or fees or cash contributions. Certainly the tax abatement, something that they will take advantage of, cash incentives. So wanted to have that discussion tonight about putting together a package for consideration of an economic development agreement. Now, they are going to apply for workforce housing tax credits, and if they're successful in getting those tax credits, for a project this size, there's $1 million cap on that. But along with that, or aside with that, would be some of the other possibilities of incentivizing them to build here. So land, the piece of land, piece of property there is owned by Grow Fairfield. And we're currently having it appraised, and that appraisal will probably come in at the end of this week. I suspect it's going to be somewhere in the $300,000 to $350,000 range in terms of its appraised value. And what I would like to propose in terms of building the strongest city incentive package and to offer in this development agreement would be to consider doing a swap with us, essentially conveying the land to the city, forgiving loan that is right now on the land purchase for the Sunrise Trail subdivision of $200,000 that I believe was an investment out of local option sales tax. So essentially moving that in. The value, it will be the $350,000 appraised value for the land as something significant in terms of an incentive to the developer. And then that portion being a key cornerstone for the incentive package. The next would be fees. We've discussed this before. We don't have significant building fees at this point in time. You may have them by the time they actually start construction, depending on your activities over the next year. But either way, when they go to a community, they're paying, I'm going to say probably for something like this, probably as much as $2,000 a building in fees. So the fees could still very much be a part of that. The tax abatement is, I think, already in place because we do have policy that would meet what their objectives are, is to have a 10-year tax abatement in lieu of, asking for a TIF for the infrastructure. And then the other major piece of the package would be a cash incentive, and that is something that our organization will work through our foundation. So we'll be working with some of our largest employers to put together, hopefully, $300,000 or $400,000 in a cash incentive to be a part of this as well. So with all of those in place, I think it would be close to $1 million in an incentive, which I think is an expectation and something that's reasonable for the amount of investment that's going to be made. Again, in particular, because with the infrastructure alone for all of the streets and the underground work, we know what it's costing out in the Sunrise Trail subdivision, well over $1 million. And although these streets will not be built to the same standards, there's still probably $1 million plus investment that's going in just in the infrastructure. So that's a summary of what I wanted to discuss tonight, but I'm eager to hear your reactions and your questions. We have met with city administrator and with the Economic Development Committee, so they have seen this already, but would love to answer any questions you have.
What's the timeline here, Ed?
Great question. So the sooner we have a development agreement, the sooner they pull the trigger on everything that they need to do. They put the engineers to work. They start to plan for construction. The conversation we had a couple of months ago when they announced that we would be their next project was we'd like to be moving dirt in the fall. So in order for that to happen, they would have to have kind of a solid commitment from us. If it languished a little longer and they waited until they knew whether they were getting tax credits or not, then that process would take you to September. And I don't know whether they'd be able to get any work in this year. So I think over the next couple of months, if we had something in place that would give them the confidence to go forward and to start the planning. So I think that's what we're looking at. I guess the other side of the question is, if we don't do that, if we don't come up with something like that, they're still interested in the community, yes. It's just going to take a different timeline, a different path.
So I understand that the $350,000 land value, the city's basically swapping a $200,000 asset for $350,000.
Right.
And then we're providing that to them. And I come up with about $300,000 imputed fees if it's $2,000 per unit and there's 150 units. Right. Something like that. And then $300,000 to $400,000 cash from Fairfield Foundation. How solid is that? I mean, how confident are you that we can pull that off?
I think it's I'm basically taking it one step at a time. I have the major donor already in place. Okay. That has a major amount for matching, And I've had conversations with all the other major employers as well. They know an ask is coming. I feel confident. I feel confident about it.
So in order to trigger the development agreement, what specifically do we need to do? What do you need to hear from the council in order to?
Well, I think if these ideas sound plausible, then I think it would be the city attorney that would start to work on putting together the actual proposal, what that would look like. I think there would probably be some negotiation, so it would be a draft of a proposal that could present to them and see what kind of feedback we get from them, which is why the other thing is probably the sooner we do this, the better. Also, I mentioned too, I also gave you one page from the 2026 Iowa Thriving Communities application, which is something that we're going to apply for again this year, having missed it by just a point last year. And if you look at that financial support, where in the application, there are 15 points awarded for policies or examples within the city where you have used any of those elements. So you have waived fees or in-kind contributions, TIF or tax abatement, willingness to use LMI funds, local financial support, land, including private sector. So we're talking about all of those areas that are the hallmarks for the designated thriving communities that they've already awarded in Iowa. So this would be also very strong for our workforce housing tax, our Iowa Thriving Communities application.
I know, Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
You're probably going to ask me what I'm thinking anyway, but go ahead.
I know that I believe I was on the Ways and Means Committee, or we had several discussions about the $200,000 loan the city made for the purchase of the land, which is now the Sunrise Trail Division. I know there were several questions you had at that point. It was kind of a back and forth, and the city finally made a decision to do so. So I'm wondering how this possibility of a swap.
I'm wondering the same thing, actually. And this was your predecessor, who at the time wanted to have about 50 closed session meetings about this. Which I'm
in the open kind of guy. So.
And I know we kept coming up with roadblocks. It was going through Eilers and Cooney, back and forth a lot. That we were able to do this, and I think we probably need to find out from them too, if we switch this over, if it's going to have any effect on what we did. I want to hear from Eilers and Cooney that we can do the land swap, and that's
sorry
that's
we've done that
good.
already.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Let me speak to that a minute, Tom. We had a phone conversation with one of three people that is probably going to team up on this at Eilers, Jenna Sobrowski.
Okay.
I'm expecting Jason Comiskey, and I'm also expecting Kristen Billingsley Cooper, one of our home county kids up there. She's not a kid anymore, but anyway. Jenna Sobrowski was the only person I was able to talk to start with, but the format that was just outlined for you as far as the pieces of this development agreement proposal, I ran it by Jenna. She said that all of those things, if you fit them in the appropriate parts of the Iowa Code so that there is value exchanged, it'll work.
It will, okay.
Some of these things assume a lot. I mean, we're assuming that if Ed says it will be a $350,000 appraisal, that something like that will show up and be part of our package described to Eilers. Eilers has 2 or 3 different parts of the code that show how this will work as part of a development agreement, so it doesn't appear to be any kind of outright gift to anybody in the private sector. As long as there's a value exchange, this should work. The different parts of this that need to take place, put them all into a development agreement. Eilers has done probably at least 10 development agreements for us on things that either were a specific development agreement for a funded project or were specific development agreements for TIFs that the city has done, and they've all had elements like this in them. So I think we'll be on good ground, but we also have to see how things turn out as far as the things that Ed has described. I have every confidence that Ed can produce on this foundation with a match in it, and also that appraisal out there is in line with what's out there to be developed. And we've seen other things out along that strip that we were doing that were popular to start with as far as LMI. I don't think I'd characterize Kading as LMI necessarily, but they are going to be a nice substantial development in that area that fits and will probably be something that the neighbors welcome as compared to some light industrial development out in the field there. So at least that's my read on the neighborhood from people like Mr. McGuire that sometimes shows up if there's too much of a hint of industrialization. So that's my 2 cents worth on it.
Tom, yeah, I wanted to make sure we were good with them also. So John suggested the phone call.
Okay. All right. If that
particularly
works.
if we were going to, if they had a better way to design it, then we would take that approach too.
If that works, it's already way easier than it was last time.
Yeah, and again, the way I see, being able, it really leverages both projects because we still have several $100,000 of electric and gas infrastructure to put in there. It helps to leverage the Sunrise Trail project to kind of keep that moving, get it fully built out. And then also, I think it gives the city the stronger package of incentives to really solidify the relationship with this developer.
Okay. I mean, if it goes like it's spelled out, and we have Eiler's approval on it, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't have any objection at all.
So we know that
it sounds great.
So we know that, yes. So that we know that the loan the loan package we made for the Sunrise Trail subdivision was going to be paid with the sale of the lots.
Correct.
Over a short period of time.
Well, no, actually, I believe there was a installment due annually, and then they were going to pay it off sooner as the lots sold. Was the intention.
It was $10,000 a lot. As they sold.
Yes. Yep, so as each lot I think there was a minimum. So if a lot didn't sell, there was still a minimum payment.
Okay.
And then at $10,000 a lot on top of that.
So this is going to change that, right? Significantly. The city's not going to be paid back. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then we'll recoup the finances from the sale of the lots in the new development, correct?
No, there wouldn't be anything being paid back towards the city on that. I think the value is the investment in $30 million in capital improvements.
And we don't need to invest in the infrastructure of the road and things like that because they're doing it themselves, right?
Kading, yes, absolutely. And that's a big part of this. It just really is. That's why they are pursued so heavily. It's just it's so unique for a developer to come in and do a full project and not. And again, you're not getting the exact standards for the streets themselves. You will with the. I mean, I think that everything will be to code for water and sewer.
I think I've seen this figure, but what's the approximate expected property tax revenue from this? Expected property tax?
We haven't done that work yet. I mean, you could take the.
Just roughly?
I haven't done that number yet, Bob.
Okay, all right. Well.
So, what percentage of that is actually going to be, what is the rollback going to be?
Yeah.
Got a few steps, probably wouldn't take too long, but I don't have that number.
Right, and that won't be coming in for 10 years, but
Right.
But it will come in 10 years.
Yeah, and in that period of time, there'll be 30 single-family homes, and hopefully we're into phase 2 or 3 on the Sunrise Trail subdivision too. So it's a big splash. It's a big opportunity to make, a big investment upfront at this time.
I mean, it ultimately is 156 units. That's significant in terms of adding to our housing stock. And the price range is going to be, it's not LMI as John mentioned, but it's going to be
Workforce. They describe it as workforce housing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of communities that they're in. They really, they're really surveying the manufacturing companies and what they're paying. Their target is someone that's making $18 an hour and above. So it's market rate, but it's kind of workforce. Right now, they're at $1 a square foot, which I think is competitive with this.
So we're not in a position, of course, to make a decision as council at work at the study session, but as I understand, there's going to be perhaps an appraisal completed by this week?
Yeah, I was told by the 15th I should have something, so maybe by the end of this week or early next. And I can certainly, work with John to start to flesh out something that would be a draft, and then we could come back.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
Council.
also, I think if we put on the agenda for the next council also a letter of representation with the Ehlers folks, so we get that going also, because, I've, out of 10 or 12 development agreements that I can describe for you, I've drafted 2 of them. And everything else, no matter what, was courtesy of people up at Ehlers helping. And the 2 that I drafted were redone several times, including by attorneys on the other side. So I do not profess to be the public finance lawyer in the crowd there. Ehlers with a team will be what we want to rely on as far as everything passing muster, especially when they're going to probably be taking what we've done with them and showing it to other people that will be Kading side of the leveraging, and they want it to be triple A type public finance backed also, as far as the law firm looking at it. So we need Ehlers in the mix is what I'm saying.
Sure.
If there are any other ideas, any other concepts for incentives, this is a time to start discussing other ideas as well.
Absolutely. I think that, can we, John, you're going ahead with your appraisal anyway, and you're going to maybe meet with John, perhaps put together some draft. The council's not making a decision to go forward, so we're not really voting upon anything. But I think to me, that makes sense, and we ought to support moving in that direction without actually voting on anything. Does that make sense? Anyone else?
Would it be appropriate to make a motion subject to the appraisal, so to give it a little bit more of a?
We're in study session.
Well, no,
So
not
we're
in the
not-
study session,
Yeah.
but in the regular session.
Well, we're going to talk about it again when the Economic Development Committee gives its report.
Okay.
I don't know that we should take a motion or need to make a motion at that point, because I think that the next step is you're going forward with an appraisal anyway. That doesn't require council approval. Thank you for the information. And we're not approving or agreeing to any development agreement, but the fact that it may be some draft or something like that being worked on.
Yeah, I mean, a general motion to permission for the council to go forward to draft a development agreement for consideration would be okay.
We can do
That sounds appropriate to me, just to give the process a bit of a stamp as we see it right now.
So we can consider that in the council meeting. All right, and council can speak to it.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. We have 5 minutes for our next item. Fortunately, I believe this item is also going to be spoken about in the regular council meeting, but let's go ahead and get started with this, if you will. Deborah Williamson is going to speak on proposals for a fountain and Heritage Alley Arc. Thank you, Deborah.
Good evening, Councilman. So the water fountain, I'd like to simply table that for now. The funding for it is uncertain, and the location, I think, is still up for debate. And so that just leaves us with the Heritage Alley Arch. And do you all have a sketch in front of you of the arch?
Yeah.
So it's a standalone arch that goes into the nodes on either side of the crosswalk on the south end of that brick alley. And its measurements are going to be sufficient for service vehicles to go through. It will be made out of a sturdy metal that's very similar to what the look and feel of our park benches. It's kind of an oil rubbed bronze, very pretty. And then the lettering would be gold over a dark backing. And so you would see, as you're facing the alley, you would see the letters Heritage Alley, and as you're facing Central Park, you would see the letters Central Park. So if we can just, if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer.
Council, any questions?
Presume all the engineering, everything is set to go?
So we have the basic dimensions determined, and the locates have been determined, and the property owners impacted have also verbally agreed to this. The next step, if in the regular session you vote to approve, the next step would be for us to create a more sophisticated design, complete with the engineering specifications that could then be approved by the city from an engineering perspective. As a standalone, it has to go, so many feet deep and so on. And then once that second approval is complete, then we would move on to fabricating it.
Sorry. There's one additional step that's going to have to take place. So the street naming system within the code, we don't have a naming system for our alleys. So if this is going to be the official name of the street that would give addresses to anyone on that street, it depends. Is this like a park? I mean, and I don't mean like air quote. Is this a park, or is it officially like a street heritage alley? So if it is something that's going to be giving somebody addresses, we need to put it in our ordinance. I suppose even though if it's more of a park along the lines, council needs to approve the name Heritage Alley, because otherwise, I mean, we can just go around naming alleys anything we want. And actually our sign ordinance doesn't allow people to put up signs naming things without council approval. So, we would want to have an ordinance go through officially accepting the name. What section we put it in depends on how we want to classify it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Do you see a benefit to naming it a street? To me, that seems like a lot of extra work.
Yeah, and I think I just need to look into it more as to whether it would fit better under the public property section or the street naming section, and I'll just have to look in that section of the code.
Okay.
Because I think if we put it as a street name, then that's going to confuse. I know there's people who have property off of that, but they're going to be like a Broadway B or something like that. So I think we're better off putting it under a different section of the code, but it's still going to have to go into the code.
Yeah, I would agree.
So the folks who have shops there already have an address. They just, so we don't need the street in order to have addresses. So
yeah, we're just going to need an ordinance or something saying, yep, we agree with the name Heritage Alley. So
Thank you. We're going to stop that, conclude that discussion, the study session. We're ready to start our council meeting. I think it's going to come up again in notes of property. So study session is closed, and we're going to begin our city council meeting. Yeah, let's see here. Rebecca, would you first give a roll call?
Thompson? Here. Toohill.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Council, are there any changes or suggested changes to the consent agenda?
Real quick on the regular agenda, I need to strike this resolution for tax abatement application for 401 West Stone. We need to do some more investigating into the contract.
All right, thank you. Any other changes or suggested changes to the consent agenda or agenda? If not, I'll read the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the January 26, 2026 council meeting. Approval of the January 31st, 2026 payroll in the amount of $187,525.58. Acceptance of the library board minutes. Acceptance of the property committee minutes. Acceptance of the volunteer center committee minutes. Resolution of promotion in the wastewater department. Approval of liquor license for Walmart store number 985. Approval of ACH payment to Iowa Department of Revenue in the amount of $21,831.76. Approval of total claims in the amount of $332,968.71. Claims in excess of or greater than $75,000 are Krishner Contracting Incorporated in the amount of $170,018.44.
Move to approve consent agenda.
This motion to approve the consent agenda by Kness.
Second.
Second by Ferguson. Any discussion?
Couple things. The 170,000 is for the fire station, and then the amount of total claims at 332,968.71 should actually be $333,068.71. There was a $100 typo on Verizon Wireless. It should have been $398.26 and not $298.26.
Thank you, Tom. Also, I know the property committee minutes. Bob, you attached a document to that. Is that part of the minutes as well?
Did I have? Yeah. Let me see.
There's like 20, 30 pages.
Oh.
Case for downtown.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess that did get appended to it.
Okay. All right. All right. Anything further? Any other discussion? If not, Rebecca, will you please call the roll?
Kness.
Yes.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That motion passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is public forum and appearances. We have Chris Sorflaten speaking to Source Water Program. Thank you, Chris.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So just to briefly summarize the idea, so there's a program called the Iowa Source Water Protection Program, and I spoke with Matthew Dvorak, who's the director of that, and he agreed that Fairfield would be a good candidate for the program, where they could look into our well water supply and different ways to make our wells last sustainably, indefinitely. So in my research, I noticed that Mount Pleasant just drilled a new well in 2023, and then I talked to the well drilling company, and they said those new wells cost about $3.5 million. So I thought the city would be interested in applying for this program. It's a free program, and that's about it.
Is there any commitment the city makes in applying for this program? Any dollar commitment or any promise we make?
Nope. We just need someone from the city to call or email Matthew Dvorak.
You know something about Bob? Yes.
Well, Doug and I had a conversation about this, and my impression from that conversation is that we are already in connection with this program. So maybe Doug could help us out understand how we're utilizing that already.
So everything that the city does is heavily regulated by the DNR. And that, again, the email, the communications that we have is with their geologists, and the DNR is divided, as you know, into multiple different departments. They have fish and wildlife biologists, they have a geologist, they have all of these different divisions, and they regulate we have to give them reports, and they're monitoring our Jordan wells and any sort of, all of our water equality, all of those things are regulated by them. And so if there's recommendations that we need to make, they will communicate with us, and then we follow their lead. That's how all that works. Is that helpful at all? Yes.
It sounds like that we're sort of in this program, source water program, already. Is that what you're suggesting?
I don't know
Is there
that
something
we're
additional we have to do?
We're talking with them, and they'll make those recommendations. And Chris has actually done some of the research that we already have talked about internally, and adding on to those things. But Melanie has sent out some of the data reports that we've talked about, and we sent it to Bob that we've already looked at some of these things, and the communication between the replenishment of the aquifers and the conservation items that we already do, yes. But then there are other things that the city can do proactively in the future, such as passing regulations and ordinances of, low water usage of toilets and faucets and what have you, that we can implement to help conserve water so that we're not using nearly as much. So we do a lot of those things already, and we continue to work on that. And the water superintendent has come in and talked to us about it and some of the things that we'll be doing in the near future. But again, Walton Lake is another one. The other thing that people are confused about is we're on the Jordan Aquifer rather than surface water, which we used to be. And so those are, again, all regulated, and they let us know if we're doing something that we're not supposed to.
Is this something that we need to apply for, or are we already doing it?
I don't know. I don't know that we've applied for this particular individual, but we'll look into it. And I think that we've reached out and talked to them already, but I don't know that we're in the application process.
It looks like there are 3 phases. They do an assessment, help us develop a source water protection plan, and then the implementation of that plan. I mean, if it's free and if we aren't already doing it, I
think I'd like a little more. I mean, it says aquifer, investigate aquifer recharge options. Now, the Jordan Aquifer, if I right, goes from southwest Minnesota into Missouri. So, I mean, this isn't like a little pool of water underneath Fairfield that we're using. This is across the entire state, eastern side of the state of Iowa. I want to know what aquifer recharge options means. That's something that's, we're not capable of doing.
Is this something that is worth reviewing more closely by a committee?
Which committee would this?
I'm suggesting environmental and franchise.
Don't think so.
It may be that the benefits we get. I don't know, Chris. But maybe the benefits of this program we're already receiving. Maybe we're not. But it sounds to me, just listening, that we might want to do a little bit more looking to study to determine whether or not it's of some value to us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to join committee. Just real quick, in my conversation with Matthew Dvorak, he mentioned that one reason we haven't been seeing a lot of research coming out of geology is because it's kind of, he called it a dying field. There's less students enrolling, there's less PhDs, there's very little research coming out of geology. So I have a lot of my own ideas. I've done my own math, and the idea is that you have real super slow flow going through that confining layer, and there's new terminology coming out from other regions where they call it a semi-confining layer or a partially confining layer, or maybe there's cracks going through that confining layer that can recharge the aquifer. And according to my calculations, there's about 1 billion gallons a year going through the confining layer because it's a 30-mile radius. So you have 1 times 10 to the negative 10 feet per second of flow, according to data from the 90s. And then over 1,400 square miles, that amounts to 1 billion gallons a year. So obviously, these are not precise, these are kind of ballpark figures, but the Source Water Protection Program has geologists and people on hand that can examine it more carefully and get more interest in geology, because this is a problem that's statewide and Midwest-wide. This is a huge, worldwide water crisis kind of issue. And so I
would suggest that perhaps we move this to, or as a council member, I make a motion that we move this for further review to our Environment and Franchise Committee. Maybe, and you'll get notice of the meeting. Perhaps you could show up and talk more about it.
Yeah.
A second.
There's a motion and a second to prefer this issue, consideration of the source water program, to the Environment and Franchise Committee for review and perhaps recommendation or comment from them to the council. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Rebecca, if you call the roll, please.
Gandy.
Yes.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Let's make sure we have Steve Rediger from the water department there too. When we did the deep well out behind John Cook's farmhouse on Pleasant Plain Road, that's been 15, 20 years ago now, but we did have concerns about the deep well we had. It was just below the spillway dam out at Walton, and that's still there, and it's still a capable well, but the one that was put in out at the Cook site was intended to be sufficient for a century. And I know we had DNR down looking at both. I think we had sort of the negative vibes on the one south of the spillway at the same time that the one out in the field at the Cook farm was supposed to be everything we needed, and it was a much deeper well and much more water production. But I'm sure that there's more that Steve knows about it, and my understanding is DNR checks it as far as the water circumstances, as far as its productivity every month. So do you know something to that effect, Chris?
No, I just mostly looked at well 7 because that was the one at risk of dipping into the tier 2 warning stage. And I'd also like to just kind of point out, look, Mount Pleasant just had to drill a new well. Do we want to be like Mount Pleasant? Can we preemptively do things so that we can avoid being in a Mount Pleasant situation? I think it's a great idea. I mean,
so let's see. Rowe, Esty, and Toohill are members of that Environmental and Franchise Committee, so I'm sure you'll take those steps necessary to have that meeting and have the discussion. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Rose not here. Your name's before mine, so you're in charge.
I don't think I'm the chair.
Now we move on to resolutions, action items, and ordinances. First action item is consideration of authorization to purchase a pickup truck. And we have Calvin Todd.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, Calvin?
I'm good. How is council doing this evening? Good. All right. So what we've got there, I think you guys have a memo in the packet there too. It's a half-ton pickup truck to go to our parks department. Right now, our newest truck that we have is a 2011, and then we go down to a 2008. This will be a half-ton pickup truck that we'll still be able to kind of pull trailers behind and use for our maintenance department. This is also a item that has been budgeted for. It's in our budget, but with our financial policy, we've reached that threshold where I get to come and talk to you all and get official permission to purchase this. So we did get 3 different bids. We went to 3 different dealerships, told them what we were looking for. Got a couple of different brands too between Ford and GMC. So the one that I'm proposing that we move ahead with the purchase is the one here with Fessler's. It's a half-ton F-150, came in with the best price in my opinion. So
in looking at the data sheet you attached to the resolution, there's some handwritten numbers at the end. On page 2 of 3, page 3, where it says it's written F-150 Super Cab.
Yep.
And then it has a number, invoice 47098.72. Then handwritten below that's 47,598 minus 3,600 to arrive at 43,998. I think that's 60 or 00. I'm not sure. Could you? I'm just trying to understand that. Could you maybe speak to that a bit? What does that mean?
So we get a little, like, they've obviously take some money off there. We got a little bit of a discount from them. I don't know where the discount comes from, but and why it's on there, but the number is 43,998. So
A government discount?
Well, it could be, but a lot of dealerships now, what we found is not even really doing that a lot anymore. And to be honest with you, one of the dealerships we talked to, the government discount wasn't even really a discount. It ended up being more than what the truck just was, which doesn't make sense to me. But that, that was kind of the way it went. I can find out why we got the discount on there, but I wasn't really asking too many questions.
Sure.
Handed that in.
It's due to your strong negotiating skills.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought.
Right. Yeah. So.
And it comes under budget. I mean, you've budgeted.
We budgeted for it. Yes.
52,000,
Yep.
and so.
Yep. So we got 40 in our parks, and then an extra 12 that was would be coming from loss. So a majority of this will just come out of our budget, and obviously we'll probably put a toolbox in the bed of it, but they'll. We're still quite under budget on it.
Of course, we're not paying sales tax.
No.
You don't pay sales tax on cars. You pay use tax to the treasurer's office.
We're not paying that.
We're not exempt from that, are we?
I don't.
We might be. It's
think-
5%.
I don't recall us paying that.
Okay.
It's
Just
just,
probably a government exemption, I would
Yeah.
guess. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Move
I
to-
usually put G on the title.
Yep. Okay.
Request.
Just one last question from me. Is this a good vehicle? I mean, I know there's some trucks are. I appreciate you doing the work and getting the bids.
Right.
Some trucks are recalled. Is this?
This is the most popular truck in the entire world.
Yep.
Yeah, particular one.
I'm a Ford guy
F-150.
myself, so yeah, I'm going to be a little partial to it. But no, it's going to be a brand new pickup truck. So it'll take probably about 8 weeks for it to come in. But you see it. It's I don't know if you've seen Steve Renger's truck that he drives around. It'll probably be the exact same as that. So.
I move to approve authorization to
government,
purchase
right.
a pickup truck.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to point out too that this was on his budget request 2 years ago, and we removed it due to restraints. So he's been holding out a while for this. So.
We're persistent.
Yeah. If there's no further discussion, Rebecca, if you call the roll, please.
Esty?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
Thank you, counsel. Thank you,
Thank you.
Calvin. Motion passes unanimously. Next action item is consideration of authorization to apply for an AARP Community Challenge Grant for the renovation of the public restrooms.
All right, so the public restrooms, we begin. Our contact at Pathfinder suggested this mini grant for the public restrooms. The AARP Challenge Grant is for public spaces, and the limit for this particular grant, the challenge grant, is $15,000. And so we're wanting to apply for this and use it towards the public bathrooms, not on the inside, but on the outside where the landscaping and the walkable path for the seniors and benches and the things like that that would go outside the public restrooms. There's no match, there's no application fee, it just needs to be applied for by the city. The due date on the application is March 4th. And then we would receive, I can't remember what month we would receive the notice.
Deborah, you'd mentioned 15,000 in the copy here. It says 25,000 is up to 25,000, or is it 15,000? This grant could get up to 25,000.
So,
but is the 15,000
yeah, so I
number
think there were 3 categories of the challenge grant, or of the AARP. There was, I can't remember the 3 categories, but in really studying it, the one that fits best, that we're most likely to be approved for, is the public grant, which is a limit of 15,000.
Okay, great.
So just by reducing the scope of the outer, of the hardscape, we're able to meet that 15,000 limit. And I don't have a design to show you. We did start meeting Terry Baker and Ray Ward and Marla Brader. We've sort of gotten together and talked about 2 things: how we could qualify for this grant, and what would we use the money for, and how would it be used to make the hardscape and the landscape around the public restrooms very user-friendly for our aging population. So some of the things are like a picnic table, like what we have in Central Park, with a stable umbrella, walkable path to that table from the parking lot, so it's wheelchair accessible. What do they call them? Raised beds for interaction for not only the volunteers to come see. Our seniors are volunteers as well. This is something they look for in the application, but also the plantings for an engaging sensory experience. So there would be some plants that have a scent and some plants that have are pollinators, and so there's a lot of thought going into this to make it really suitable for our aging population. And it helps them have a place to rest. It helps them with socialization, because there's just going to be a lot of beauty right there just outside the public bathrooms. So if you're waiting on someone inside, or if you're pausing there to have a lunch break, because you're right near some restaurants, then it could be a really nice spot. And it would be independent from the big tear down that we're anticipating of the public restrooms, because it would be just west of that. So they'd be able to be under design and construction with different timelines.
So what is needed from us at this point?
Just to approve applying for it.
I'll make a motion that we give the go-ahead for...
Who's in charge of applying for it?
I would fill out the application, and then the city signs it.
Okay.
Or
And second?
I show it to the city. I've actually started the application, so it's something that can be viewed online.
There's a motion to authorize the application.
Second?
And it's by Ferguson, second by Kness. Any further discussion? If not, Rebecca, you please call the roll.
Ferguson,
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Esty,
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Deborah. Next item is resolution consideration of authorization of USTEP, USTEP application for Maine and Burlington improvements.
Good evening, Council. So the USTEP application is the traffic signal grant application through the district engineer's office. Property committee, I think, is the one that talked about it. I think that was the committee that was talking about this.
Economic development.
Economic development? Okay, all right. And so on the attachment, not the resolution, but the other attachment, there is a letter to the district engineer summarizing kind of the overall situation. We have, last fall, we applied for TSIP, which is a safety grant, and were awarded those funds for the pedestrian improvements related to Main and Burlington. And so when we combine the signal improvements with the pedestrian improvements, without anything else related to downtown two-way streets, we're looking at a $950,000 project. As we get into fine-tuning the downtown two-way streets, that number might go down. There might be some overlap in engineering or contingency, but this is where we're going to head into the budget and this application with. And then on the at the top of the next page is the proposed funding sources. And so we have the TSIP funds of the $212,000 that we were notified that we received back in December. We're applying for the $200,000 of USTEP funds, so $200,000 is the maximum that we're eligible for. The $500,000 of city lost. This is the streets portion of lost, not the community betterment portion. In this capital improvements plan, we were planning on the fiscal year that we're working on the budget. We were planning on $500,000 for this project already. And so really the only thing that I'll be bringing to Ways and Means would be an additional $50,000, $50,000 of the remaining sidewalk funds to close the gap for the Main and Burlington improvements. This is what I'm going to be sending to the district engineer saying, hey, we have most of the funds available for this project. We need your USTEP funds in order to complete it. I'm not asking for the sidewalk contribution commitment at this time. I'll bring that forward later with the Ways and Means discussion. But I wanted to show you the whole picture. And again, these are preliminary estimates. We haven't even finalized the design. And so there's a high contingency amount in all of this. But that's what we're looking at for the Main and Burlington improvements. Further along in the application, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, Jason, there's a written description of what the overall improvements to the intersection include. The safety improvements or the pedestrian improvements include adding the crosswalks to the minor approaches. So this would be on the north and east sides, adding the curb extensions or nodes, but these wouldn't be landscaped nodes. These would be ones that could have some, like a semi might be able to drive over it. And then new pedestrian signals. Those are, again, all part of the TSIP application. And then what we're working on for the traffic signals then is larger lenses with better reflectivity, LED lights, replacing the poles themselves and the bases. They are in desperate need of being replaced. That's kind of the reason why this, in addition to the safety issues, the poles very badly need replaced. We are also going to put in a base as well as the conduit in preparation of the two-way streets. So even if that decision is not made right away, that we're not going to be tearing up anything in order to make that conversion. And then also we're going to have the getting new controls for the signals are going to allow us to, again, go to the two-way streets, make any modifications to that intersection if we would go to protected left turn, any modifications that we would make once we do the two-way street conversion, that we would have the appropriate, our current cabinet and our current controls don't have that capability. We would have to replace them. So we would, we would build that all in there. Also having a good battery backup on those controls, because right now when signals go down, we have a little bit of time where there's no signals. So all that stuff is going to be replaced, giving us, a good 40-year life, 50-year life on these, on this intersection. So what I'm looking for today then is the approval to submit the application to the district engineer for the $200,000 of the USTEP funds.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Jason, we go to page 11. On, it's the itemized breakdown of cost.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom of that, there's an asterisk that says USTEP eligible, and it says 500,000.
So those are the, there is $500,000 of eligible costs, but the program only awards up to $200,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Thanks for
if
clarifying.
the district wants to give us more than $200,000, we would have more than $200,000 worth of eligible costs.
And these nodes would not have flowers in them, even though this photo or the graphic, that was just a little extra? Or?
Yeah, that one, it was from the 2015 visioning, and it included some streetscape all the way along Burlington.
Yeah.
So particularly the southwest corner that is shown right in that picture. Right. DOT is not going to allow any landscaping on that corner because of, that's the one they're most concerned with as far as
running over it.
The southwest one, in order to make sure that semis can still meet that turning radius.
And so that would just be concrete.
Yeah. It'd look more like maybe the ones at Mount Pleasant. So it would still have a curb that like a car or even a pickup truck is going to feel, but a semi can make the turn if they need to.
It'll be like what's around the roundabout.
Yeah.
Like an apron.
The apron.
Yeah.
I would move to approve the authorization of the USTEP application.
There's a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Motion by Esty, second by Kness. Question, what's the time frame once we submit the application?
So they say about 2 months for the district to review this. So they take applications year round. I'm hoping around that time we also have we have the formal agreement for the safety funds, and then we'll be getting really close to the beginning of the new fiscal year, and we can start moving forward on formal design of the entire project. So once we get that formal agreement on the TSIP, I think the timing should work out pretty good, but it'll be a few more months before we even get the TSIP funding agreement in place. The TSIP funds won't become available until July anyway, so I would guess that the USTEP funds won't be in our, we won't be able to get reimbursed for anything until July anyway, even if they do tell us next month, the money won't actually be available until July.
I see. Any further discussion, council? If not, Rebecca, will you please call the roll?
Esty?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Melanie. Next item is a resolution, consideration of tax abatement application for 304 East Washington.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Kness, second by Toohill. Any discussion, council? If not, Rebecca, you please call the roll.
Kness?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
Esty?
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion passes unanimously. Next item is the mayor's report. And of course, the mayor she's out of pocket this meeting, but she did make or proposes 3 appointments to the Public Access TV Board. Those suggested appointments, recommended appointments of Mendy, McAdams, Richard Lint, and Amy Devlin to the Public Access TV Board.
You need a motion?
Do you need a
Move to
motion?
approve?
Motion to approve by Kness.
Second.
Second by Toohill. Any discussion, council?
Just one motion for all three? Sometimes we do. Okay, yeah, because it's the same board. Okay.
So, any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call roll, please. Rebecca.
Kness.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Ferguson.
Yes.
And I think our city administrator is going to speak to this as well, but as part of the mayor's report, I want to note that the Rural Housing Readiness Assessment 2.0 program is well underway. Doug is going to speak to it as well. We had, I believe, 19 students from Iowa State University visit Fairfield this last Friday, along with 3 of their instructors. They were here for the most of the day. They spent it with Malloy, our executive director of Grow Fairfield, and Rachel Hilliard, our operations manager, and several members of the RHR 2.0 committee, which the mayor appointed a couple of months ago. I was among them. They were there from the morning, 10:30 or so, at the Green Building Supply Building. Very nicely done. Thank you, Aaron Hirschberg. And also they visited and toured throughout the city. They're going to be coming back next week, I believe.
Week from today.
Week from today, and spending another half day. They say half day from. They're asking for 5 hours, so they're half day, and we're going to be visiting different parts of the city. These students are, they're architects. Some of them landscape architects, interior designers, and one, I believe, community or urban development student. So they're going to be visiting the different parts of our city and putting together something called a pattern book based upon their interaction with members of the community, including council, and they're going to submit that to their instructors. The instructors are going to come up with some model book, I believe, and something like that, and then ultimately we're going to have proposals on what we can take from these young minds and to help improve our take further steps toward improving our housing stock here in Fairfield. So we're very excited about this, and the city is playing a major role. We're one of the co-applicants along with Grow Fairfield. So I think we're going to get some good things out of it. So they'll be around. You may see them. They may reach out to council members to talk with you and maybe spend some time with you over the next couple of weeks. So expect that contact. So I just want to make sure you're aware of 2.0. You may have something to add, Doug, when you come to your report. Okay. Now we go to committee and board reports. And so, okay. First one, do we have anything else? Want to say something? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. City attorney report. Thank you, John. Sorry.
Fair enough. That's fine, Paul. I've got 2 or 3 things. One of them is a nuisance situation up on North B Street. You had a presentation from a community member here, Sue Berkey, back in December. The understanding was that she had some things to work out with the owner of the property, who had originally, after we cited her into magistrate court on infractions concerning the condition of the property up there, she was prepared to give the property to the city. Sue Berkey approached her about purchasing the site and doing a makeover of the site. We had a presentation from Sue Berkey that showed a timeline during the 2026 year for a pretty substantial makeover, $65,000 to $90,000 of makeover on the property site. I learned, courtesy of the attorneys for Ms. Bryant, that would be Vanessa Willman and Shane Zisman for Sue Berkey's side, that they have managed to work out an agreement between themselves for a closing. There was an impairment to that with a creditor's lien that has now been settled. So we had left it with them that if they could get this closing accomplished, they should get back to us at one of our January meetings. That wasn't possible, but now they have settled that lien. So my understanding is I will be sent a set of the closing papers to show that it's now transacted and transferred to Sue Berkey and her son Luke, at which point I will present that information to the judge with a request that they be added as parties defendants in our case, at which point after they show the court what their proposal is and what the city has considered allowing them to do, the court will allow Miss Bryant to step out of the role of defendant with the understanding that there is going to be at least 60-day repeated compliance reviews on Miss Berkey and her son Luke as far as the progress they make on the makeover. The judge, if he doesn't think they're doing what they said they do, has the ability under the civil fraction that has this thing in court. That civil infraction process would allow the court to do anything from telling them to demolish it to, do this by a certain date or expect some sanctions from the court. I think they're sincere in doing what they intend to do. We were shown in the presentation in December that it is possible for them to produce a nice looking project. So at this point, that's the way I'm going to proceed, assuming no one on the council has a problem with me explaining to the court that we're going to extend this thing out over a timeline that's consistent with what we heard here in December. If that falls apart in some way, I will be the first one to do a report to the court. The other side of that is as they make progress and accomplish things, I'm sure that the attorney representing them will help them make reports as far as wanting to show that they are complying as well as possible. So I'll update you on this as we go forward. I'm not looking for a great deal of visible progress to be made, probably for another couple months, but then there will be something. So as I say, we'll have reports. We'll share them with the council, but we'll also be doing it with the court and trusting that they mean what they say as far as what they showed us. There's a couple of things that are going to be going on with my office and our chief of police. We're going to have an informational session and meet with a group called the Indivisibles. I think I got that right, didn't I? And anyway, we've provided a letter of explanation that was sent around to the city officials here about what our policies and procedures are regarding if ICE comes to visit our community. And it occurred to me after I read something in the Sunday paper that I know a person who was in the paper this Sunday in a good story about something that had nothing to do with policing and everything to do with the way immigration is supposed to work. And my late friend Jim Pearson, he and his partner DeSantis over at his private law office for 30, 40 years, they were the place to go as far as immigration, visa, naturalization questions and so forth. We have another private attorney in town right now, and Amanda Searchy Ledger out at the Foss Kiken firm that's doing some of that work. We've got 2 or 3 immigration attorneys on campus. But what occurred to me was that I remembered a conversation Jim Pearson and I had about how long it takes to do some things in the private practice, such as adopting a child. And Jim compared the adopting of the child to the experience with naturalization. And for those of you that have been around a couple maybe that was in the process of adoption, you have to go through things that the Department of Human Services requires of you as far as the administrative hoops, as far as whether you're appropriate, home studies, things like that. And you probably spend a year or more just getting administratively ready for filing, and then you go through things that the district court requires. And then eventually, down the road, maybe if the district court calendar works well and you're not swamped with other stuff that gets in the way of the judge, maybe a year more into it, you have a celebration when the adoption decree is entered. And so 2 or 3 years of the experience in family law court sounds like a long time, but believe me, the families that accomplish it are very happy about it. The Sunday Register was talking about one of our residents, and I know that the path to naturalization for her began a long time ago, and she's been in town between 10 and 15 years. I don't know if any of you know Sonia Carminato. Does that name ring a bell? Anyway, Sonia was sworn in after taking the oath up in the celebration they had in the state rotunda a short while ago. The governor was there, the Secretary of State. There were accolades thrown out as far as the fact that these folks were patient. And what I recall about Jim's comparing the experience to the adoption process and how slow that can seem is sometimes getting off of the process on your naturalization. The first 2 or 3 years are just a test of your patience. And some people go through 5 or 10 years before they get through the naturalization process. Some people step away from it out of frustration and then go back. Others, if they stick to it, maybe they're going to get done in 2 or 3 years. Nobody gets done quickly, though. And here in town, I've had the good fortune in the past of being a local bar president, and occasionally somebody would direct one of the what I call men in suits, but it's the administrative Homeland Security group that is immigration, that are the people that sit at desks, help make determinations, steer things into case files that end up in front of administrative immigration judges, and do the work that is always going on behind the scenes, but takes a lot longer than people imagine. Jim was putting figures out 5-10 years ago that they were 5,000 judges short. I've heard it's more like 6,000 short now. They're spending over $100 billion on the ICE policing program and equipping and personnel that are more police and militaristic than administrative desk work. And so I don't know if they're going to add any judges to this situation, but that holds people up a lot. So someone like Sonia, that's been out there patiently going through the hoops and finally got sworn in, I congratulate her for her patience. And it's worth that when the men in suits show up and they have a package of paper and they're looking to find a particular attorney. It can't be Jim Pearson anymore. We don't have Jim, but I know I've had a couple of packages for people that did immigration work that I forwarded to attorneys that left our bar membership here and went to a different state. The immigration service is national, so they don't care where the attorney representing a candidate for naturalization lives. So once in a while I see that. That is an entirely different stream of activity that's going in with immigration and with Homeland Security, but it happens every day. So we welcome more of that, and it would be great to see that happening on a stepped-up basis. As far as our local experience otherwise, which I would expect we're going to be talking about in front of the group called the Indivisibles, about our letter about our policies towards a general visit by ICE if there was to be a raid. Our policies are that we will assist if things are being done by the book, and that means valid judicial warrant. That means a valid, if it's an immigration judge that signed the paperwork, that it's gone through the hoops under the federal rules, but it's a formal warrant. Or the state of Iowa, our level of judges at all three levels have the capacity of issuing a warrant, but that warrant would be something that would be known to any of the legal community and to our law enforcement officers. So that's a policy we have, and it is part of the policy letter that we sent out as far as things that we would always expect to be looking for as far as the assurance that this is only proceeding with that kind of a formal warrant as the starting point. That also needs to be followed up on as far as the fact that the warrant will then be accompanied by a due process proceeding after that, and that there won't be any surprises that impair the ability to do the due process hearing. We don't want our efforts here as far as keeping track of the warrant and the process being appropriate to then be short-circuited by somebody waking up in Louisiana and trying to figure out how to get a hold of their lawyer in Fairfield. But that I don't think will be the case. That we did have some other questions submitted to us to be answered in writing, but I expect that Joel and I will probably have an opportunity sometime in the next few days to sit and just talk about this informally as far as the what-ifs. And our position on this is to try to have the city as neutral as possible as long as things are being done by the book, and to recognize that there's a side of this that can work mostly off of a desktop and move a person on to the next part of the process. So like Sonia, they can be sworn in the state rotunda if we want. But the other side of it is if there are things that look like they're abuse of process, they're ignoring due process, improper notices, no warrants, things like that. Our policy spelled out in our written policies is we won't go there. Or if there's something being proposed or processed where there are actual breaking and enterings, abductions, things that are being reported like that, our policy will be to have our citizens let us know that's going on. Our policy on the city side is to assure that the law is being followed.
Thank you, John.
So
Thank you.
That's enough on where we'll be as far as the indivisibles, I think. But that is something that will be posted as far as the timing and so forth.
Thank you, John.
All right.
So our next item is committee and board reports. 2 committee reports, the Economic Development Committee and the Personnel Committee. So we'll start with the Economic Development Committee. The Economic Development Committee met this past Wednesday, and we had a robust attendance. There are 3 items on the agenda. First was the consideration of a proposed Fairfield Public Art application submitted by the City of Fairfield Public Art Commission. Council will recall at our last council meeting, Terry Baker, as a member of the Public Art Commission, which is a commission created by the mayor, proposed to council with a proposed public art application, and the matter was referred to the Economic Development Committee for review. We discussed it with Terry this last Wednesday, and without a recommendation to the council, our suggestion to her was to prepare a document record of the committee. The committee was formed by the mayor's, it was created by the mayor, I believe, in 2025, but we'd ask for a record, their organizational minutes to be filed with the city and any minutes of any meetings that they may have had since the time of its creation. We don't have those yet. She's working on those, I believe, and when our comment, our suggestion to Terry is that when we have those minutes on file, then we could more carefully consider the public art application, our proposed public art application that she submitted. So that's where it stands. We're waiting for additional information, or additional filings that the council can review regarding that request. Second item for consideration at that meeting was on leveraging the value of Fairfield's membership in the Intelligent Community Forum, ICF for short. I know Bob Ferguson has been a prime driver of that application, and Bob was speaking to us about the value of the membership. The city has invested some funds in the ICF, and there's value to be gained from that membership, including a number of things that Bob spoke about at the meeting. I'd like to have Bob, if you could, rather than me summarize it since he's here, to take a moment to tell us about what we talked about at the Economic Development Committee meeting last Wednesday.
Great, thank you, Paul. So the prime value immediate value of our membership with ICF is a series of, it's called Community Accelerator courses. There are 6 courses, 3 modules each, and they are absolutely fabulous. And I did ask one of the founders of ICF, who's never been asked this before. This was, in their mind, something that economic development people would be interested in, people who are kind of into the details. As I went through that course, my feeling was that every single citizen I could possibly inveigle to get them to go through that course, we would have a very elevated level of discussion in the city about what the possibilities are for development. Because it's basically a series of case studies of what has been done in cities near our size, larger cities, that has really allowed them to rocket forward from an economic development standpoint based on what they call the triple helix, a consortium of interest of city and education and business. And case after case after case is presented that shows how those 3 entities creatively work together. So that I have that posted. I have a new Facebook page for my city council activity, and those courses are posted there. But I'm sensitive about the IP, so I asked Robert Bell, okay, you said a few people, I want like hundreds of people. How can we do that? So he's going to write kind of an agreement, an understanding that this is now open to the citizens of Fairfield. And at some appropriate point, I will make the recommendation that we put the link to that site on our city website.
Thank you, Bob. So there isn't any recommendation from the committee to the council at this point other than Bob's update, and we're looking forward to the further review from him as time passes. Thank you, Bob.
Sure.
The third item we spoke about at the meeting was regarding Kading and the Kading initiatives, and so Ed spoke about that at our study session. And at this point, I think he covered all the points that we covered at the meeting itself. What's remaining, I believe, after our conversation then and our conversation this evening is perhaps there might be a motion to show support for Grow Fairfield to move forward with, well, we know they're going to complete their evaluation or their appraisal, but to show support and give instruction to our city attorney to begin the process of drafting a proposed development agreement. We're not agreeing to any development agreement, not right now, but we want to perhaps show support that we'd like to move in that direction. That's where we are right now. There isn't anything more to add to what I don't believe, that we spoke about just earlier this evening. So if there is a motion, or someone would like to make a motion, this is the time.
I'll make a motion that the city support the process, express their willingness to continue to support the process that Fairfield is going through. And if we need to add anything to that.
There's a motion by Ferguson.
Second.
So you understand it? Go ahead.
No, I said Terry. Got it.
Okay. Second by Kness. So as I understand, the motion is to the city is expressing support for Grow Fairfield moving forward, but more importantly for our city attorney to begin the process of drafting a proposed development agreement. So it's clear there for the record. All right. Okay. Anything further, Council? Any further discussion? All right, Rebecca, if you call the roll.
Who actually seconded? I thought that was
Kness.
a tie. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry about that. Ferguson?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Esty?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passed unanimously. All righty, and now we move on to our administrator and department reports.
Personnel Committee.
Sorry, thank you.
Committee.
We'll go on with our personnel committee report. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yep.
Jumping ahead.
So the Personnel Committee met today. We had a request from Dave Thomas's estate to pay out his accrued sick leave. Right now, our current policies only allow for that payout of up to 50%, I think, in 45 days, right?
Yeah.
I think it's capped at 45 days, 50% of that if the individual gives us written notice of retirement and then actually retires. So our current policies don't support paying out that sick leave. So we discussed 3 different options. Number 1, of course, was just to deny the request. Number 2 was to kind of make an exception to our current policies. And number 3 was to maybe add a policy for employees who are employed with the city who pass while they're working for the city. We couldn't agree on a recommendation to council, and so we thought that we would bring it to council to see what everyone feels in terms of if you have any guidance for the personnel committee, so it goes back to the personnel committee, or what you guys would like to do. I think that there's certainly some precedent out there. Other counties and communities have policies that allow for certain payment of accrued sick leave to employees who pass away while they're still working for the city. So I think that that might be something that we should consider adding. It doesn't happen frequently. It's certainly unusual. And given the fact that the chief would have been entitled to that payout had he retired, I would advocate for that. But again, we couldn't really come up with one recommendation to council. So,
Was the question? What is the functional difference to the city from someone formally retiring and then being due the full payment and someone dying? In my mind, I'd have a hard time finding a distinction there that is meaningful in terms of what the city's obligation might be. So I would just ask, what was the sense of the committee in terms of kind of the humanity and equity of the situation?
well, I mean, I think that we were just looking at the words themselves and how to define them. So obviously there was, he didn't retire. He didn't give us written notice, which is what our policy says. I think that there is, I think that equity and compassion maybe dictate that we could add this policy, and it would, as opposed to creating an exception to the policy, which I think is more of a slippery slope, if we just create a policy that allows for, and it doesn't have to mirror our retirement policy exactly if we want to give a lesser percentage or what, but that's what I think.
Yeah, that would make much more sense than just an exception. If this will come up at some point or the other, not frequently.
We asked John at the meeting whether in his experience he'd ever had this come up, and he said
I couldn't
recall.
think of it, but then I got back to the office and I had 3 examples.
What happened? What happened? Those 3 examples.
Well, one of them, we had an employee that was working down at the wastewater plant, Larry Hanshaw, a few years ago, and a barrel apparently had some chemical or something left in the base, and the barrel blew up and killed him. And Larry had a workers' comp claim, and he had a private trial attorney pursue that. And I believe he basically insisted on payment of all of these things. Let's see, is this going down the road? You bet. Okay. That situation was, I think, treated as an exception for litigation, but there was a payout basically of all of the benefits that Mr. Hanshaw had accrued were part of the workers' comp settlement. We had another situation where we had basically the end of an employment over at the library. We had a severance agreement notification. I did send the city administrator and the committee members a copy of the way that worked out, and part of it has some non-disclosure provisions, so I'm not going to talk about the whole of the severance settlement, but part of the severance settlement was an agreement to pay out under this formula we have in our personnel policy on accrued sick leave. And we actually, in that situation, we did make an exception, and we paid actually a prorated share of the accrued sick leave for 16 years earned over the 20-year rule before it's ordinarily payable. And that was part of a settlement ending in a severance that was negotiated with a labor law firm up in Des Moines. And everything ended amicably without a lawsuit. Other than that, our situation with Dave isn't like anything else. As far as Chief Thomas, it's one of those situations I'm prone to agree with Elizabeth that it maybe the best solution would be to add a little extra defining language as far as death circumstances in our policy. The other exception, my understanding is there was a young employee that was killed on basically commuting to work here. They didn't really have very much accrued benefits as far as leave time or sick leave, and there really wasn't any issue in that one that we could pull on like we did the other 2 examples that I mentioned. So, but we do have some precedents for a couple of exceptions, but I'm not advocating for exceptions either.
I also feel like that's with like severance agreements, and it's kind of a different beast.
Yeah, it was keyed to the retirement language in our policies.
And it's worth noting too, and you kind of touched on this, John, in our personnel policy regarding retired employees, those employees have to have at least 20 years with the city too. So, that's something that we could also include in this new policy. So, a certain amount of time that you've served working for the city, and that entitles you to a certain payout.
Yeah, it won't catch everybody, clearly.
You spoke, Doug, you spoke to other councils, local, nearby?
Cities.
Other cities recently, today?
Yes.
What did you find out?
They all have different varying policies when it comes to sick leave. Some cities have actually just went straight over to PTO. They've taken away vacation and sick leave, and it's just paid time off, and that's used, and that block is paid out. They've headed to where one city that if the employee passes away, that they pay out 50%, and it goes to the estate of that employee, there was just a myriad of one city just said, we would like to do this, but we can't afford it. And so in this particular instance, we had a discussion, and I know that we levy for some of our insurance benefits and what have you, but this in particular would come out of salaries out of the police department. So that is something that we would have to pass on, because we pay salaries out of the taxes that we collect and fees that we collect. So it really is up to the council to make whatever policy they feel like fits this organization. I can tell you that Mount Pleasant just had their city administrator was preparing to retire, and he passed away suddenly, and I believe it was in December, and I hadn't had a chance to call Mount Pleasant, and they're kind of going through the same situation that we are, but I don't know if they haven't responded to my request yet.
So where would those funds come out of if an employee retires? Because you mentioned it would be coming out of salaries for
in this particular instance, would you think?
It would come out of that anyway.
It would come out of that anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meaning it's coming out of the same source?
Yes.
Whether it's...
Well, assuming if it's a general fund employee, it would come out of those salaries. If it's water, it would come out water salaries. I mean, it just depends where they get paid out of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be wise, based on this discussion, for the Personnel Committee to meet again and propose language?
If that's what the council's pleasure is, I mean, we couldn't come up with we couldn't get on the same page with a recommendation. So if the council wants to have us draft that policy, then we can meet again and do that and bring it to the council for council's consideration at that time.
I kind of think when we're doing it too, we're looking for a little more input in it. So if we want to revise the policy, maybe it's something we can do at a work session prior to the next meeting when everybody's present, rather than send committee back.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And bring it back to council for approval again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, we're not looking to, make it unfair in any way. So, but we're looking for a little more input as to what other feelings were regarding this.
Yeah.
So you would recommend that we do...
Add it to the next work session.
Add it to the next work session.
Study session.
As
Study session or work session?
Study
session.
Study session, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when we do that, who comes up with language? Or is it not, do we just, I guess maybe that's just a broader question that I have. If we've got committees and we're meeting in the committees and then we're not coming to any kind of agreement in the committee and then we're just punting it to the study session, I really don't understand why it just seems so redundant. But so when we have a study session, what's going to be, who's bringing what to the table? Like, what are we going to discuss more than we've discussed now? Or is somebody going to be bringing policy language or?
I mean, what we could do is refer it back to the Personnel Committee, and the Personnel Committee could bring to the council a proposed amendment to the policy, to the employee policy manual, incorporating death and the payment of partial payment, I believe, of accrued sick benefits, and have the council review what the policy is. Not recommending it, or we may want to recommend at that time, but we're not voting on that now. But we can come up with a policy policy language that the council can consider as a whole. That would be moving things forward without. I think it's a difficult decision. We're having trouble with it, and I understand. I think I understand why, but we would at least be moving it closer to a decision by the council if we actually have the language of a policy change.
And would it be wise to have Doug and John participate in that committee meeting to assist the property committee, or rather the personnel committee, in order to assist? You're doing research, John. You
Yeah, I probably owe it to the council. Yeah, I know I've talked to Doug about this in advance, but I'm in a situation where I got a hat on both horns. It's conflicting because, first of all, the executor of Dave's estate is his former spouse. They've been divorced for several years, but she's the mother of his children who are his heirs, and my office is handling his estate. So at some point, I would have to step back if we had to file a claim and have someone else do that. At the same time, someone else would have to advise you too as far as where to go on this. And I can give you a lot of pointers while we're talking here, and we're not really adverse with each other because we're throwing everything on the table. But if it turns into an adversity, I basically have to step back on both sides. And I know Doug and I have talked about that scenario as far as where we go with this. Now, I think the executor, she's more than capable of continuing on expressing what she thinks the position of the children are. And each of the children, they have their own lawyers as far as they're grown adults and so forth. They're not little kids. But I'm not sure exactly what they're being told. But this is kind of a unique, it's an interesting question as far as the personnel manual that most of the time the public doesn't see. The exceptions that I mentioned earlier tonight, they popped up about once every 15 years. So you're not having an abundance of this kind of situation to mold any kind of policies out of. So I don't envy the personnel committee the ultimate decision that needs to be made if you get it revised. I'm more than willing to input something with the caveat that I also have a file over at the office that's on the estate. So you're certainly entitled to question me completely as far as whether there's some bias there. And I want the best for Dave's heirs to the extent that that's possible, but I also don't want the city to feel cheated or misled. And some of these things that are in your policies, they get down to little subtle things like the conversation about where is the money coming that is going to pay this. I know in two of those examples of scenarios that were exceptions, in other person's situations, the discussion in each of those, virtue of another trial attorney, was that there's an entitlement there because the employee contributed to that from part of the withholding that we keep track of on every paycheck. And if you've been doing that for 20 years or 26 years or something like that, you're probably going to get a pretty strong argument from the estate or the executor that that wasn't out of line to refer to that as an entitlement. The situation where we had with the severance settlement a few years back, that was referred to by a large labor law department in a large firm in Des Moines as clearly an entitlement. They threw some cases at me from the Iowa Supreme Court about it makes a difference if there has been some contribution towards it. So those are just a couple of scenarios where there was something else to consider. And I'm sure there's a lot of other factors that have to do with what's humane and what's appropriate and so forth that you start looking at that, and it pulls you away from the black letter language of the policy enough so that you reassess and reassess. But we have a pretty well organized policies and procedures manual. And
are we in a position then to refer this to Personnel Committee to draft a proposed amendment or change to the policy manual and have that reviewed by council.
I mean, I'm not opposed to, presenting it at a study session or to, having all of us just look at the relevant personnel policies and then come up with something. I just wanted to know if we're going to be having it at a study session, what is going to be different at the study session than the discussion that we're having now. So that's all. I'm not opposed to having it at a study session.
I suppose you just get more opinions and therefore you have more.
Right, but if we
yays or
have
nays.
something that's presented that everybody can review and so that we are all making that informed decision, and if we don't. Yeah.
That would suggest we would refer to personnel. Personnel would come up to propose. I mean, the way you're mentioning it, refer to personnel, come up with a proposed amendment. It's not approved or voted upon by the council, but we present it to the council, and they can, the full council can review it and decide whether or not to go forward with it or not, or amend it or change it in some way. So there, at least I think the process of, from my point of view, the process of drafting a proposed change is going to help us in making a decision. It'll be useful in helping us make a decision at some point.
I mean, if council even wants us to make the change,
Right.
I mean, like we discussed, there were really 3 options in front of us, and so not knowing which option council has the appetite for, I don't know.
Well, should we have a discussion of which of those 3? Is it appropriate now to have a discussion of which of those 3 we have an appetite for, or do we want one more crack at it with the personnel committee to bring something back to us?
So I think we kind of agree that making a one-time adjustment is probably not the way to go.
Right.
So that leaves us with either moving forward or not moving at all. So I think if we get together and we draft something or come up with something, if I get the feeling that the sentiment here is that we move forward and try to amend the policy. And if we draft up something to do that, then we're only really left with the 2 options of either yes or no. So I don't know if we really need to get into the weeds of anything else. I kind of have the feeling that's where we're heading with this anyway. And I get the gist that that's kind of where everybody I think kind of feels that way. I'm not trying to speak for anybody, but we could move forward in that direction if it's agreeable.
Sounds good.
I would agree with that.
Okay. You okay with that?
Sounds good.
Okay. So we have a motion to move it back to personnel.
That's your motion.
Yes.
You make it okay.
To move it back to personnel, to move forward with a draft of amending the policy for sick leave pay in the event of untimely death.
Right. There's a motion. Second.
Second.
Second by Ferguson's. Motion by Toohill. And the understanding, as I understand it, is we're drafting it. It's going to be, but the idea is going to be considered by full council.
Correct.
Obviously. Okay. All right. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Rebecca, if you call the roll, please.
Toohill?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Esty?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. Our next item, administrator and department reports. We'll start with our street department. Memo. Is Mr. Hurd here? Yes. All right, Joe, it's your turn. Street department.
I suggested to Doug that we start charging $25 a load for the mulch. We load mulch a lot of the Fridays and Saturdays. I don't know what the schedule is. I don't have it in front of me, but a lot through the summer, and so the skid steer is sitting there running. And it gets taken advantage of a little bit. They come in there, they'll go home and dump a load and then come back for another one. And I just think, just like with the brush, it'll help offset some of the cost. Equipment's getting expensive, so.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments, council, or questions, Mr. Hurd?
No. No.
No, I mean, it's still well less than what a pickup load of mulch costs, so.
I thought we had like unlimited mulch. Was that years ago? I remember we talked about
Our
there
pile
just
is
being-
starting to dwindle, and we will have to spend a good chunk of change to when we get there. I've had this pile, but it's going quickly, so I'll have to regrind eventually if we're gonna keep it, but to offset the equipment cost this year has been pretty substantial. And the heavy machinery, our loader, the skid steer, our backhoe, when that stuff has to be repaired or replaced, it's very expensive.
Do you still plan to put mulch out behind Hy-Vee and let people self-load?
There's a lot of people that do that, and it's really nice for the residents that aren't abusing it. But there are people, and I don't know how to fix it. There are people that bring skid steers in and they load the entire pile up in their dump trucks and take it to their farms. And I really like it that citizens can go down there and scrape that in. I don't know how we're going to fix that right now, but the loading of the mulch at the shop, I just feel like it would be nice to offset that cost a little bit.
Okay.
Joe, how much of the cost is a $25 fee? How did you come up with the $25 fee?
It's kind of the same as a full pickup load of brush. If somebody brings in a full pickup load of brush, that's kind of what we charge them. A half pickup load is $12.50 or something like that. And we have people that bring in some pretty good sized trailers, and we're putting 2 and 3 scoops in there. I know the real good mulch from Bass is like $85 for a small scoop. So I just feel like it will help. The people that really want it will get it. They're going to pay that. And then the other people that are kind of abusing it, it might kind of slow that down a little bit.
I thought we implemented the brush load fees so that we would offset those costs as equipment costs.
I think it was just brush with what I remember, but I could be wrong. I think that it was just the brush coming in, and then if the brush has to be ground, and us handling it also.
Right.
We've also increased our, we used to just do 2 brush pickups a year. Now we're doing 4. That's about 4 weeks of about 8 pieces of equipment running through Fairfield. So.
But we did all that because it was going to be so much cheaper to have, and I thought the reason why we decided to have more brush pickups was because it was going to be significantly cheaper than just having the mulch pile that was being abused in the brush pile.
It does help keep that down, but I also did that because I felt like I wanted to make sure the citizens were getting the brush picked up. I'm handling the brush in Fairfield.
Right.
That's the reason I did it.
Oh, okay. I thought that we talked about the money.
Well,
and
it
being
is
cheaper.
significantly. The contractors are not bringing their stuff in. So yes, we do have less.
Right.
But there's still a lot. When if I just knocked it down to 2 times, we'd have even less.
Right.
So and a lot of people bring it in on Fridays and Saturdays too. It's a pretty busy place.
Yeah.
So, but it's up to you. You guys.
It does have to go through an ordinance and 3 readings.
This would have to go through an ordinance?
This was to kind of get your opinion, and then we'll bring an ordinance.
Right.
The 15,000 to grind?
A big pile, yes.
When was that? When was the last time?
I don't have the date, but about 1.5 years ago. Parker, I think Ottumwa, we had a guy from Ottumwa do it. And since then, I did have a local guy do a small amount that was 5,000. It was a minimal amount, so.
All right.
Oh.
I mean, considering there's costs associated with having employees there on a Saturday and, the fuel, using the machines. I mean, I think it's a pretty manageable fee because it takes work to make it mulch. It's not mulch when it comes in.
Right.
I mean, and we've had people look at taking it over, but they just they can't make it work for what it cost.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not feasible.
Yep.
Well, that was the property too. It's not our property that we were looking at too. I guess the only reason why I asked those questions, Joe, is just because I remember when we discussed all of this and we first implemented the fees for the brush, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that those discussions were about offsetting the cost to mulch it, and then, you know, like, oh, we've got so much mulch, we can't wait to get rid of it, you know. So again, I feel maybe I'm just misremembering, but it's not that the $25 is some crazy fee. It just seems like we just implemented, and maybe it's not just, it was like several years ago, talked about implementing the fee for even bringing brush, and then I thought that was for offsetting those costs. But
I think the initial, when it all happened, I was just trying to get something done, and maybe I didn't think through everything that needed to be done. But you know, like I said, my guy is sitting out there. It's 90 degrees in the skid steer. The air conditioner's running. The overtime, but it's not what we're getting. I mean, I think last year we got maybe 40 or 50 tickets. Yeah. Times $12.50. It's not that much money is coming in. We're still spending a lot more. Than, it's not like a money making situation. Mm-hmm. So, but that's up to you folks. Whatever you want to do.
Well, Joe, under the circumstances, is $25 enough?
I think it needs to be something to slow down the people that are abusing it.
Is that one of the major reasons?
It's one of the things, but also to help offset some of the costs. So I think when you add a fee to it, it's a whole lot less appealing than if it's free.
Okay. So he's asking, is that enough? You want it more? I mean, should it be more?
We have to
You're out there.
serve the citizens somewhat, you know.
Right. Okay.
I'm just trying to offset it. You know, I think if you make it 50 and 60, you're not gonna. I think then it won't. Which, you know, then it might come to an end. I don't know who's going to buy it then.
And we're really not offering a premium product.
No.
We're offering what's dumped and ground up.
I think 25 is a reasonable amount for a scoop. You know,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's not a scoop of cedar wood or something like that. So.
Yeah.
Does a load fill the back of a pickup?
Depending on which bucket we use, yes. A little more, and depending on the pickup, yes.
Yeah, I haven't priced it at Walmart lately, but their bagged mulch used to be $5-6 a bag. So 4 or 5 of those bags, and you're catching up with yourself. And I'm sure that there's dozens of bags in the pickup bed.
Like a pickup truck.
You'd be spending several $100s to
easily.
So we probably need a motion to instruct to move to an ordinance. Is that right? Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moved.
There's a motion, and the motion is to
create an ordinance indicating a $25 fee for each pickup load of mulch provided by the streets department.
Would that be sufficient for you, Melanie? Okay. There's a motion by.
Do we want to include 25 or just creating a fee? Because that may be floating eventually.
Right.
Is there language you can put in there that creates a fee but doesn't put
A fee
name a
structure.
dollar
yeah,
amount?
resolution we could create.
Can you do that via resolution? In other words, so you can change it without creating a new
I'd
ordinance.
amend my motion to not include the dollar amount, just a fee.
Yeah.
Just to include
A fee.
A fee.
Okay, a fee. Is that good? Melanie, it will work? Okay, there's a motion by Kness. It's been amended. And
Second.
And there's a second by Toohill. Any further discussion, council?
So everybody who's coming is bringing a pickup truck, or does anybody ever come without a pickup truck, or there be?
There occasionally are people with SUVs that fill up
Okay.
Like totes
buckets
or
and
something.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're charging $12.50 when they bring in something like that, right?
Yeah.
Roughly. So
Yeah.
I mean, it would be probably comparable to the same fee structure.
All right, anything further, council? If not, Rebecca, you call the roll?
Kness?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
Esty?
No.
Gandy?
Yes. All right, thank you, council. We've approved. Our next item.
Thanks,
is-
Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Yes. Our next item is city administrator report.
We had a busy last couple of weeks. We're always busy, but in particular, I wanted to, and I know that you've had communication with me back and forth. We had last Friday the Daybreak Counseling Incorporated come to speak with city employees with some of the losses that we've had over the last 6 months. I thought it was extremely important that we utilized. There's not a lot of counseling resources in Fairfield, and this was a service that was recommended to us through Jefferson County. I do have these brochures in the back. I've got 40 or 50, but also we could pass them along to citizens that may need some resources. But they sent 5 counselors down to talk with employees. It went very, very well, and I wanted to thank them. And they actually do work with our insurance companies to, if city employees would like to reach out and do some side counseling. I also wanted to, that very same day, we had the ISU students from the Housing 2.0 going around. I sent every one of the council members an email from one of the professors. They would actually like to talk with the council members and their wards. And if you read that email and the information that they sent us, that they said that they'd be happy to come and set one-on-one or meet with you via Zoom in regards to your wards and kind of ask some questions and field things out. I know that the council is extremely busy. I also told them that if they wanted to meet with you together, that they would either have to come to a council meeting or we would have to publish a special meeting to have the discussions that they need to go through the information that they're trying to gather.
So they'd be willing to meet with individual council members by Zoom or in person? Okay.
Both.
Both.
Whatever you would desire. But again, it's a long ways for them to drive. I think it's 2.5 hours for them to drive down here.
Yeah.
So we'd have to make special arrangements. But I also said that if, the information that if they need it sooner rather than later, then we can figure out a way that we can have those Zoom meetings and kind of answer the questions that they need. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is we should have budget books prepared this week for Ways and Means. And yay, and here we go. Again, we're a little bit behind, but we're ready to go to get those assembled and start arranging those Ways and Means meetings. And then the other thing that I would like for us to begin conversations with personnel, that given the circumstances that we're in, we will be needing to figure out what the council's desires and recommendations for the search for a police chief, whether we want to use a search firm, whether we want to do it locally, whether we want to promote from within. What does that look like? What sort of a police chief are we looking for? We definitely need to make sure that, when we're hiring for Fairfield, and every city is looking for something different in expectations when it comes to their department heads. And this is one of them. So I would like for this to go to personnel for consideration, kind of get a game plan, and then move forward with next steps. I don't want to rush this. I think this needs to be a slow burn so that we're evaluating who the next chief will be and what that chief looks like. Is that fair?
Fair. So it's you'd like to refer to the personnel committee?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you.
Do you need a motion for that?
Let's have a motion to send it to committee.
I would move that we send that to the personnel committee.
Second. There's a motion to refer the consideration of choosing the steps of choosing our next police chief, refer to the personnel committee for a review. And there's a second. Any further discussion, council? If not, Rebecca, please call the roll.
Esty,
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Thank you, council. That passes. Any further?
I set for questions.
All right. Any questions of our city administrator? Council? If not, is there something?
No, I'm waiting for Tom.
If not, we will. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion. And a second motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, council.